I was gonna make a joke about Linus Tech Tips, but when I was assembling all this junk a few minutes ago, I dropped the power supply on the floor, so guess that's a foregone conclusion. Sometimes I get asked questions along the lines of, is this computer good enough to run GameMaker, or what kind of a computer do I need to make GameMaker games? And what these questions really boil down to is, basically, what is the min spec that you need to use GameMaker? If you go on the Yoda Games website, there is a system requirements page on the help desk, and you can read it, and it will tell you that, in essence, the system requirements really are about as low as they come. There's a couple of hard limits, such as you need a 64-bit CPU and operating system, and if you're using Windows, you need DirectX 11 capable graphics in some form or another. You need a dual-core CPU, ideally a quad-core CPU. I don't even know if they make dual-core CPUs anymore. You need 2 gigabytes of RAM, ideally 8 gigabytes of RAM. I don't even know if you can buy 2 gigabyte sticks of RAM anymore. But if we're being honest with ourselves, reading this technical specifications page on the help desk isn't the most fun way to answer this question, so I thought it might be fun to go ahead and build a computer that can run GameMaker for as cheap as possible. So here is my PCPartPicker list of what's going to go into this thing. I will have this linked down in the description of the video if you'd like. So as this description says, this isn't the absolute lowest you can go as far as computers that can run GameMaker go, but well, when you start to cut things down lower than that, you're going to start getting diminishing returns price-wise, and you're going to start experiencing, like, actual pain. So let's run through this. We are going to be using an AMD Ryzen 3 3200G. This is a quad-core CPU, so we can take that system requirement off of our checklist. And crucially, it also has onboard graphics, so I don't actually have to go and spend money on a graphics card. For those unaware, when it comes to AMD's CPU nomenclature, any CPU that ends with the letter G is going to contain onboard graphics. AMD likes to call these APUs. This CPU also, if you get it new, comes with a fan bundled in with the whole thing, so you can skip out on spending a little bit of extra money there, although there's a little bit more on that I'll get to in a minute. The motherboard is a Gigabyte A52M. I'm not going to read the rest of that name because it's very long. This is a pretty bog standard AM4 motherboard. It does not have built-in Wi-Fi, which turned out to be a little bit more of an inconvenience than I thought, for reasons that I'll get to later on when I get to putting this thing together and actually running GameMaker on it. The RAM, I've gone with 16 gigabytes of DDR4. If you wanted to cut a little bit more off of the price of this thing, you could probably go down from 16 to 8 gigabytes. Maybe not super comfortably, but without too much pain. But this is already one of the cheaper parts in here, so cutting back further on the RAM wouldn't really save us that much. The hard drive is a Team Group T-Force Vulcan Z240 gigabyte SATA SSD. Again, if you really wanted to squeeze the price a little further, you could either get a smaller SSD. They do make like 120 gigabyte SSDs, or you could get a small spinny mechanical hard disk drive. But again, that wouldn't really shave too much off the price. And well, running an operating system off a mechanical spinning drive is a lot less fun than running an operating system off even a cheap SATA SSD, so we won't be cutting back that further. The case itself is this DIY PC orange thing. I don't really know how to describe that, but honestly, for $27, it'll do the trick. And the power supply is an EVGA 400-watt ATX power supply. Just as a general recommendation for power supplies, it's probably not a great idea to get like an off-brand cheap power supply to save money, because, well, if your power supply blows up, it could take out your entire computer with it. EVGA is a fairly reputable brand, and 400 watts isn't a lot of power anyway, but that's just some general computer building advice. Anyway, I should probably also qualify all this with, this is US prices because I do live in the US. If you live in different parts of the world, different components could be more or less expensive than what you're seeing here. At different times in history, depending on like what's going on in the world of computers, different parts could be more or less expensive than what you see here. Anyway, all told, for me right now, this comes out to about $255, which is incredibly satisfying, I must say. Plus shipping, plus VAT, tax, whatever. And I have to say, the fact that you could build a functional computer for $250 is just completely wild to me. Like, when I was a kid, if you bought a computer for $250, you would be sitting there for like a half hour waiting for it to boot up. And while the bemoanment of prices of, for example, high-end graphics cards at the moment is certainly justified, I'm definitely rather happy with the state of entry and even mid-level computing components at the current moment. So before we begin, I am going to go click edit this part list because as it happened, I actually got my AMD Ryzen 3 3200G used, and instead of $78, I ended up paying about $50 for it. And unfortunately for me, that did mean that it didn't come with the default cooler, and I had to actually go get my own CPU cooler. Which one did I actually get? I believe it was this, the Arctic Alpine 23. This still comes out less for me than it would have to get the CPU new with the included cooler. I forget how much I paid for shipping on this thing, but that dropped my my overall price down from $255 to about $238. Depending on availability, used computer parts might or might not work out for you. Like, I have no problem using a used CPU as long as like the pins aren't melted or anything. But at the same time, I would probably not want to buy, for example, a used power supply. Anyway, also, and I won't be doing this initially, but I do have in my possession a spare GTX 1650. I forget exactly. I think it was this one, the Asus Dual OC. That price does not look correct because that is definitely not what I paid for that thing. I've had this thing as a backup GPU for a long time, like just in case anything happens to mine. I want to say you can find 1650s for about $140, $150 these days, which isn't great for a card of that age, and I'm not sure if I would recommend it. But after I get this computer built and test out how it feels to use GameMaker on it, I'll pop it in and see how that changes the equation. So to the surprise of some, I have never actually built a computer before, so this is going to be a bit of a new experience for me. I'm going to start with some motherboard here. What's this? That's a hard drive, thermal paste. Before I open this box, I would just like to point out that one of the marketing lines on it is no lag, just frag, which has got to be one of the most gamer things I've ever heard in my life. Okay, so we might as well start out by opening this box and taking the motherboard out. And let's see, you can go over there. This room is going to be such a mess in a half an hour. Anti-static bag. That's always a good place to start. I really hope that I'm not going to touch something that I shouldn't and accidentally electrocute myself and or fry one of these parts that I just got. I probably should not ball this up and throw it on the ground just in case I need it later. Right, so because I got my CPU used, because it was like half the price, it came wrapped up in this very professional arrangement of some cardboard and some packing tape, just taping the thing to the cardboard. Like, it's got the plastic covering it so that the pins aren't exposed, but alright. These are motherboard connectors. This one is probably for the power button on the case, so I'm gonna want that. And this is like the back plate, which I'm also gonna want. Let us free the Ryzen 3200G from the cardboard. If I can do that without making a mess, that would be great, but we seem to be a little bit late on that. Oh, it's also taped so that it doesn't like just come open. That's probably not a terrible idea either. Alright. And here we have it. I have never actually used a Ryzen CPU before. And then when I started using laptops in high school, those were all Intel based. This is a very squeaky table. Okay, fine, maybe I shouldn't lean on it. And this computer, I think, actually predates Ryzen. That is a 7th gen Intel. Anyway, so how do I actually... I did do computer surgery and replace the motherboard, the CPU on my computer once. And that was a bit of a harrowing experience that I'd like to not repeat. There is a little notch in the corner. Okay, maybe it would be easier if I showed this camera instead. There is a little notch in the corner, which is to tell you which direction the CPU is supposed to be oriented in this pin grid array. And I want to say... That sounded good. It goes in like that. And now... this is the part that worried me when I thought about doing this video. Now I need to, like... That was so much easier than installing an Intel LGA 1151. Is that really all I had to do to get that thing securely in there? God, Intel, what are you doing? The mousetrap thingy that keeps the CPU in on my computer was so much harder to get in there. All right. I don't need this anymore. I suppose it would make sense to start putting the small things in. CPU cooler first. So this is a, what is this, an Arctic 23, an Arctic Alpine 23. All right. I can't say I know a ton about Arctic, but they're all over the place when it comes to CPU coolers, so I assume they know what they're doing. Okay. That is a sizable heat spreader down there on the bottom. Let's see. Before I fat finger this and do something I regret, let's see. I'm gonna want. This is the fan power. Where does this plug in? I feel like this should be easy to find, and I'm just not seeing it. Oh, that looks like it. CPU fan. It's even labeled. Because Gigabyte had the foresight to realize that idiots like me. Oh, come on. I feel like that should not have been harder to get in there than the actual CPU was. Gigabyte had the foresight to realize that idiots like me are probably gonna like try to plug a USB into an Ethernet port or something. All right. Do we actually already have thermal paste on there? Is that normal? Like I said, I know where the parts in a computer go, but I've never like assembled one like this before, and I have my own thermal paste. I kind of assumed that I was gonna have to take care of that myself, but it looks like there's actually paste on there. I'm just gonna add a tiny bit. That was a little messier than I'd like. Okay. Before I put this down and do anything drastic, where do these actually attach to? There are these two. Okay, I think we're gonna want to do this, and. Oh, do I have to loosen these screws? It would probably be easier to get these things around if I loosen the screws, wouldn't it? Why are all the screwdrivers in this bag flatheads when I need a Phillips head? What's this? That might do it. No. Oh, yes. No, that's too small. I also just found out just now that the audio that I was recording for this video got messed up because I was recording input from my microphone on the computer over there, and I dropped something on the keyboard earlier, and I hit the space bar, and it terminated the recording, so you're just going to have to deal with the cell phone audio for this part of the video. Anyway, let me actually try and loosen these a little bit, and see if that makes it easier to... Alright, there we go. I heard a click. Work smarter, not harder. Now we're just going to tighten these screws so that the fan and heat sink don't bounce around. I think this one was already pretty good. Okay. Fans on, CPUs in. Those are not going anywhere. Next order of business, I'm just going to slot in the RAM, I think. This is two 8 gigabyte sticks of DDR4 to go along with the AM4 motherboard. Alright. This I know how to do. This I've upgraded the RAM on computers many times in the past, if I can get it out of the box. Might be easier said than done. The same could be said for a lot of computer parts, but in particular RAM, for whatever reason, whenever I pick it up, I am like paranoid that I'm going to snap it in half. The fact that I'm just throwing this stuff on the ground probably doesn't help. Anyway, I'm going to put the screwdriver over here so that it's out of the way. Where can I put that fan cable so that it's not going to be like in my way? This thing isn't even in the case yet, and I'm already failing at cable management. So if I open these two slots, which way do we need to face? We need to face this way. There we go. You're in place. Now for the second one. Okay, that was a lot more drama-free than some of the other parts have been. This is a regular SATA SSD. Does it actually have a SATA cable in here? I'm actually not sure if it does now. I might have to go and find one. Oh, it does. Is that a SATA cable? I forget what I said I thought this was earlier. Anyway, I'm probably not actually gonna really waste time with this until this thing is actually in the case. Alright, let's worry about that after that thing is in the case. Thermal paste, I'm done with the thermal paste. Anyway, I'm gonna move the motherboard off to the side for the time being, and we can now start taking apart the case. Okay, so that the side that the motherboard goes on is in that side. So I think if I start over here and unscrew the sides, that would provide the least risk of droppage, which I'm generally a fan of. I'd better not lose these. Okay. I know that peeling off the plastic of PC parts like this is very satisfying, but I'm going to save that to the end. That's going to be the last thing we do. Also, now that we're starting to do case things, and I'm realizing how small this table that I'm working on is. And all right, so they zip tied some extra screws. I assume those are for the motherboard inside the case for me, which I appreciate. Okay, so these are power. These are the various power connectors. Okay. There are fans in this thing, which is nice. I actually wasn't sure if that was going to be the case when I ordered this thing. Really. I do have a box of spare computer fans sitting around somewhere, but I guess I'm not going to need those. Alright, with more space on this table, this is going to be a little easier. So let me also take off this side, because I think I'm going to need this side if I want to be able to actually screw on the motherboard. Alright. So this is, at the very least, this is one of the parts that I can say I know a lot less about than like CPUs and RAM and that sort of thing. Like, I know the general shape of what I have to do to get this thing in, but I've not seen it up close before. The outside connections are on this side of the computer. I'm gesturing, but I don't think either camera can see that. So I'm guessing that's where like the HDMI and the USB headers and that sort of thing have to go. There are these cute little standoff things in there, and this is kind of inconvenient because I can't see if I'm actually like if I actually have them in the right place or not. Okay, I can see them through the holes in the motherboard, and they're approximately lined up. Am I going to need a screwdriver for this too, or can I just freehand this? Oops! No! Stop! Come back! No. All right. At least they didn't end up on the floor. It looks like I'm supposed to freehand this. I remember this from playing PC Building Simulator a few years ago. Okay, I think I've got it lined up properly. Looking at the screws, let's see. I see that I'm probably going to want a screwdriver for that too, aren't I? Because I'm not going to freehand that. Alright, so that should be, as long as I don't slip and, like, stab a capacitor with this thing or something, I should be okay. Okay, I'm going to get them about halfway to start with, and then I'm going to go around and tighten the rest of them. And that one fell into the case. and I'm having a hard time getting it out. Why do I have oven mitts for hands? Okay, so I'm actually going to take these sticks of RAM out because they happen to be just in the right place where they're kind of in the way, and I kind of don't like that. That's a lot better. Is that screw the wrong size? Please don't make any dirty jokes about that. I lost a screw, and I don't know where it is in there, and I know it's going to rattle around, drive me crazy. It's probably going to fall out later on when I least expect it. So it probably doesn't help that the screwdriver that I was using is not exactly the right size and it kept slipping around. So let me see if this is any easier. Let me put the RAM back in. Kind of figured that RAM would be one of those parts that it would be easier to slot if you did it before you put the motherboard in the case, but apparently... Alright, those aren't going anywhere. Apparently that is not how it ended up working. So, I hear the screw that I dropped rattling around in there, and there we go. At least that's out of the way. Okay. For stability purposes, it might not be a terrible idea to take this little shield and... which way is this going? It's going to go this way. Do I need to screw this in, or is it just going to like snap into place once everything else is there? Oh wait, I see what I'm supposed to do. This thing is supposed to go on the inside, not on the outside. Which means that I'm going to have to unscrew everything that I just did. I think we're going to be here for a while. I'm going to send this video to like all of my friends who know how PC building works, and they're going to laugh at me so hard for this. If I can align this from the inside, I believe it goes something like that. This would definitely be easier if I like stood over here. And also, now that I'm looking at it from this side, I see that there is a screw down here, which I assume is to hold this in place a bit better. Hey. There's a cable in the way. Okay, so which screw goes in here? Is it this one? This is like a different shape from the other ones. Hopefully, getting these in the second time will be a little bit easier because that shield thing on the front makes the whole thing a little bit tighter, and there's a little bit less room for things to shift around in here. Okay, that was definitely easier than the first time. Let's see, let me put the RAM back in for the third time now. On the upside, I'm getting quite good at slotting RAM. I believe I'm going to want that. All of these extra screws and stuff can go back in this bag. I don't know how many of them I'm going to need, but I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not remember where I put them. So let's put that over here. Zip ties. I think I safely don't need the zip ties. I'm gonna let's see. What is this? Oh, this is the motherboard speaker, like the beepy thing. I actually was not aware that they still made motherboards with built-in speakers like this. All right, well, that's not my biggest priority right now. Let's see. What I'm gonna want next, I think, is let's see about this little solid-state hard drive here. This is a SATA SSD. We do have somewhere on here an NVMe drive port, but I don't know where it is, and I wanted to do this since SATA drives are typically a little cheaper. I wanted to do this a little bit as cheap as possible.
Hey.
Let's see. We can go and break that seal. Okay, so this does not have a SATA connector to go with it. Is that what this is? It's It's hard to see through the... Alright, yes, this is a SATA connector. Alrighty then, so this is going to go in here. And the other end is going to plug in here. I probably shouldn't... It's going to clip in very satisfying. I probably shouldn't try to like screw this on, mount it until I got the PSU in, right? Oh, I see the thing that's labeled speaker in there. Okay. Don't know if it's that important that I get this in here, but just for the fun of it, there are 6 pins on the thing labeled speaker, but this thing only takes 4. Don't know what's up with that. Although, the first time I boot it, I expect it would be nice to have the speaker for like post and error codes if I did something wrong and that kind of thing. Alright, 400 watt EVGA power supply. Where is the opening? This is the opening. There we go. Alright. So there are some screws to go with this. Alright. You saw that. This is what goes into the wall, or really the power strip, since I don't think I'm going to be plugging this thing directly into the wall. Okay. This is going to want to go through here. Alright, I see that. I've done power supplies before. I've really done most of the parts of a computer at some time or another in like an upgrade process. I just haven't done the whole thing at once, and I haven't really touched the motherboard, hence why I had so much trouble and or fun with that one. Let's see. So this is going to go like that. And I'm going to need these screws to make sure that it stays where it belongs. I think these are actually the same size screws as the ones that came with the motherboard, so that if I did drop those, I could probably use some of the extras for that. Alright, let's see. Again, let's screw them about halfway, and then once they're all in place, I feel like I'm stuck on something. That was weird. Anyway, yeah, let's screw each of these in about halfway, and then once they're all in place, I can tighten them. Where's the last one? The last one's here? Okay. That's not going anywhere. Now to just figure out which of these cables go where. This is not one of those fancy modular power supplies, so we're just going to have a bunch of loose ones just dangling around in there because I don't have a lot of things, at least not at present, such as a graphics card and stuff. I will at some point toss in that 1650 and see how that does for us. But first, this is going to be the motherboard power. Let's see. This one is directional. Like I can't turn it around. I think it has to go in this way. Nope. That we go. There we go. That way. Let's see. I said something about a SATA power connector. Where can I find one of those? That's going to be one of these guys. Okay. I had it the right way around. There we go. So the hard drive should have power. I can now install an operating system on there. What else do we need? I need CPU power. Which one of those is these? The overhead camera can't really see that well into this thing, can it? That's going to be this one, I think. I'm gonna make so many enemies over this cable management. And let's see, as discussed, this is, by the way, dangling around in here. That will be the fan, which has to plug into the motherboard, I believe. Maybe I should have remembered to do that first before plugging everything else in. Well, this one here says system fan, so I'm gonna take its word for it. I might have tried to put it on the wrong way around. Alright, just like USB, you have to turn it over like 3 times before it fits. Okay, I think that's in there. Let's see, what else do I need to power? I've got the motherboard, CPU, power, SATA. I don't think I actually need the rest of these until I get around to doing GPU things. We have USB headers. USB and the audio jack that I assume is on there somewhere because this is a device that was not made by Apple. You know what? I think I won't unzip tie those just because I don't think I need to. The USB header is... I heard a click, that's a good sound. These two, USB and audio, as we discussed. Okay, maybe I will actually need to undo the zip ties here. See, there's also a bunch of things for like the power LED, the actual power button, and those are gonna go. Can the overhead camera even see that? Those are gonna go on the thing that says F panel, front panel, isn't it? This is another thing that maybe I should have done first. It's labeled in tiny letters. My eyesight is not that good. Power LED. Which one is positive, which one is negative? The one on my left is positive, the one on my right is negative. Alright, let me actually write that down because there's no way I'm going to remember. Okay, let's start by separating these a little bit. I am the worst, like the actual worst when it comes to dealing with power pins of this size in any context. GPIO on the Raspberry Pi, forget it. What I really could use right about now is a little more light so that I can see actually where I'm sticking things. I think I missed with that one. Did I? I think I got that one in the right place. Big stupid head is blocking the light. Okay. I hope I got those in the right place because I do not want to have to go in there again. Is that everything that needs to be hooked up? Oh, I've also got these. What are these for? This is USB and an HD audio. Alright, we discussed that earlier. I saw that a minute ago. Okay, yes. That one says USB, front USB, and that one says front audio. Okay. At least these are like all stuck together in the right order. And I see they very conveniently have taken out some pins so that you know which direction it's supposed to go. Alrighty then. Is it time to plug this thing in and see if we can at least get to the BIOS? What do we call that in computer speak? The post stage, power on self-test. So many zip ties. So much plastic junk. I dislike plastic, but what are you gonna do? Alright. What would be the easiest way for me to do this? So, I have got a very old and admittedly rather rusty power strip here, and this cord is not long enough for it to go on the table, so I'm just going to have to put it down behind me there. Let me see. One more zip tie out of like 500,000. This is ideally the easy part. This is going to go plug in back there. This isn't long enough either. Alright, so a short amount of rearranging the furniture later. It's time to turn this thing on. This thing does not have an operating system on it yet. The hard drive is clean right out of the box. I do have an old Windows 10 installer, which we're going to toss on it. I'm not going to bother with 11, because who cares about Windows 11. But first I want to see what actually happens if you try to boot up a PC with no OS on it, because that's also something I've never done before. So this is going to be a... Oh, for a moment I thought I lost it. So this is going to be a new experience for me. Hopefully, the fan is going. We're gonna see the Gigabyte BIOS. If I stand here for a minute, I should clarify the CPU fan is going. The ones that are actually on the case are not, which means I'm sure that I plugged something in the wrong way. That's a beep. All right. American Megatrends. So this is new CPU installed. TPM NV corrupted or TPM structure changed. You know what I also don't have is a keyboard and mouse, which might have been a little bit of an oversight, but okay. I'm guessing that this is because, yeah, we can't boot because there's nothing to boot onto. But that's I just wanted to make sure that I didn't, like, you know, try to plug a USB into like the Ethernet port or something, as I have done several times with computers before. Could have gone worse. All right. The back case fan goes on. Oh, you know what? I did forget the front case fan, didn't I? All right. Thank you, beeper. Let's see. You're gonna show me the same message. Can I? What was it? Delete to enter setup. All right. For a minute, I thought I forgot to plug in something important or something again, but no. I just asked it nicely to reset the TPM device. I rebooted the device, the computer, and entered the BIOS settings, and now we have a Windows 10 installer. I am going to speed through this because, to be honest, it's not that interesting, and most of you all probably want to get onto using GameMaker on this thing already, so, alright. Okay, we have booted to Windows. Browse the web with Microsoft Edge, the new browser recommended by Microsoft for your PC. I don't think so, somehow. Would you like to download and install drivers and Gigabyte utilities via the App Center? That sounds like a good idea, but I don't trust computer companies enough to not also install a bunch of garbage on my computer when I do that, so I'm gonna do that manually, I think. Let's see, the first thing that I need to do is not open Task Manager, but, well, actually, Task Manager wouldn't actually be a terrible idea. Let's see. So our computer is an AMD Ryzen 3 3200G with Radeon Vega graphics. All right, we've got 16 gigabytes of memory. As promised, we've got a Teamforce T-Force 240 gigabyte SSD. As promised, and that's the Windows installer. We don't care about that. No GPU doing anything interesting because we've got onboard graphics. All right.
Hey.
Everything looks in working order. The second thing I'm going to do is go into Okay. Remember how I said at the beginning of the video that the lack of the onboard Wi-Fi on the motherboard was going to be a problem in a way that I didn't expect? Well, that problem is that I thought I had an Ethernet cable that was long enough to reach from where this computer is set up here to the room where the router is, and it turns out I don't. So I had to unplug everything and, like, pick it up and carry it over to the room where the router is and plug it in, like, sit on the floor and download all the Windows updates and driver updates and that kind of thing. While I was doing that, by the way, I installed Google Chrome, and when I searched Google Chrome in Microsoft Edge, it tried to shame me into not downloading Google Chrome, which I thought was adorable and also stupid. Where were we? So I also installed GameMaker, I installed Steam, and Exophobia, which is a GameMaker game on Steam, which I thought might be fun to benchmark and see how that feels. Speaking of benchmarks, I also installed 3D Mark Time Spy and Cinebench 2024 just for fun. I'll run those at the end of this video because I'm imagining that you all want to see GameMaker first. 3D Mark on a computer without a GPU is going to be amazing. Anyway, so I've got a couple of projects that we can run. One of them is Wizarducks, which is the game that I like to work on. It's a game about a duck who is a wizard. And I've also brought along the platformer template and the tower defense template, which come like pre-installed with GameMaker, and we're gonna go and open up those and see what it feels like. Let's see. So I went ahead and actually disabled the Steamworks extension in this Wizarducks project because I don't have the Steam SDK set up here, and I don't want that causing problems. But if I run this now, so we have Wizarducks and the Lost Hat. I can play this. This should behave just fine. I don't have an FPS overlay on the screen anywhere, but it looks like I'm not seeing anything obnoxious. I'm not seeing anything that looks particularly laggy or anything. We'll see how it feels when I start running around on the overworld, and then from there I will like play around with the settings a little bit, and we can see how that feels. All right. So when particles and everything spring up on the screen, that's fine. I thought I had an FPS overlay. That might be like a debug mode thing, and this is in a release mode. Anyway, let's see. I can pick up that. I can walk around. I can cast spells. This all looks fine. If I were to go into settings, the quality preset is defaulted to custom. That's not normal. Let's go and visual tweaks. Everything is alright. That's all default. I don't know why it set it defaulted to custom. If I bump up the flower density to 300, for example, and the particle density to 200, for example. Alright, I'm feeling like this definitely doesn't feel like 60 FPS. Again, I don't have an FPS overlay on it, but considering that I bumped up the flower density pretty high, and considering that this is an iGPU, that's not bad. Alright. Enough for that, I think. I'm going to quit desktop, yes, please and thank you. As far as how it feels to actually use GameMaker like this, if I were to open up one of these levels and play around in the room editor a little bit, let's see. So these admittedly aren't the most complicated rooms ever because a lot of stuff in Wizarducks is spawned in like generatively instead of being manually placed thousands of objects in the room editor. This isn't terrible. If I go and click on one of these, we can see that we can select an object without too much trouble. The screen real estate on this relatively small screen that I have right now is kind of causing me a problem, but that's not this computer's fault. That's more of GameMaker's fault.
Hey.
This really is crowded, isn't it? Creation code. If I open up a creation code window, that's fine, right? If I were to open up, let's try and open up like a bunch of files at once in a workspace and see how that behaves. All right, that was actually more responsive than I thought it was going to be. I swear it lags more than that on my actual computer. Anyway.
Hey.
What else can we do? Can I open like a large code file? Can I open up a large code file and see how it feels to like to edit a large code file? Like if I just I'm not gonna do anything really meaningful here, but all right, copy and paste a lot of code. All right, that actually feels better than I thought it would for a code file that's this long. If you are feeling lag, you can go and like turn off Feather, which is a little bit more resource intensive than a lot of things in GameMaker. There's also a couple of other preferences related to performance in here, such as I think in Workspace there's like a Bezier precision. Yeah. Might be slightly more efficient to knock that number down a little bit. Alright, so Wizarducks and the Lost Hat works on this Ryzen 3 3200G. That's satisfying. I'm going to let me close out of here And I'm also going to open up the platformer template, Windy Woods, I believe is what it's called. And we will run this, and we will see how this feels. I did not log into GameMaker when I installed it. I also did not activate Windows, so you might at some point in this video see the please activate Windows splash showing up down in the corner here. I think that usually appears after like an hour of the computer's been on if you haven't activated Windows. I don't really care about that. So let's see. I expect this to take a little while to run. So GameMaker games are generally not really single-threaded, but the asset compiler can be, and I kind of feel like if I were to run a really big game through the asset compiler, it might take a while because 4 cores, 4 threads versus 4 cores, 8 threads on my main computer. Let's see. So we can play Windy Woods. We have an FPS overlay at the top, and it's actually reporting 60. I wasn't sure if this was going to do that because this game, it's not a big game, but it does have a lot of large HD art, and a lot of there can be a lot of sprites on screen at once. Let's maybe see if we can run along and see if we can get into a more complicated part of the game. At least we would if I was better at this game. Alright, let's try and get a little farther than that. I think there's like farther along this level. I remember playing this earlier when I was talking about what was it? Texture compression. God, you can get into a more complicated part of the game with more enemies and stuff happening at once. But that requires being good at this. I also believe that the didn't see you there. The wind particles and like the trails that are drawn behind the wind particles can be if not like graphically demanding on the GPU, that can be a little bit CPU intensive. But it looks like the CPU is coping just fine. Got 600 FPS underscore real here. All right. So I think that's enough of this. By the way, I set the theme color in Windows to red because I thought like the default gray is kind of hideous. I'm gonna change it to something else. And then I realized that like when you mouse over the close button with a red UI skin, you can't see that the close button turns red because it's already red. And by the time I figured that out and went back to change it, Windows had decided that I had not activated it, and it was going to lock me out of theme configuration until I did that, so oops. Anyway, we can get rid of the platformer template. We can go and now open up the tower defense template. The platformer template is called Windy Woods. I don't remember if the tower defense template also has like a name. Anyway, let's see. Alright, so this is Towers versus Monsters is the name, apparently. And this is basically a Kingdom Rush clone, so we can go and build ourselves some towers. Wave 1 can start. We can build ourselves some more towers. This might be a better stress test on the whole thing because tower defense games can lend themselves to having a lot of stuff happening at once. Let's see, if I upgrade some of these towers, will we have things going a little bit more haywire? Let's see. I'm going to go and speed through the first little bit of this, and I'm going to try to launch a few levels, and we'll when there's a bunch of enemies on the screen, we'll see if the FPS dips and to what extent. But this is very light on the CPU so far. Windy Woods was definitely heavier on the CPU. Our FPS real is about 1,000 here. I don't know if I were to... Oh, there's only 3 waves defined here, whatever. If I were to uncap the frame rate, I don't know how the GPU FPS would go, but this is definitely fine. We can definitely run our template projects here without any issue. And possibly if you were to like leave the ID open for a long time, and if you were to edit a larger project like the size of Wizarducks for a long time, things might start to slow down a little bit. The GameMaker IDE has been known to have like memory leaks in the room editor and stuff, which is, again, not necessarily the computer's fault, but until GameMaker gets its act together in the performance department, then That's how things are going to be for the time being. Although, again, for a CPU that I paid $50 for and did not buy a GPU for, this is definitely very reasonable. What happens if I build another tower? Can I do that? All right. What happens if I like get to the end of this? Is there just going to be a U win screen and then that's going to be it? I can't imagine that there's going to be like a whole lot of actual content in these template projects. If these guys could hurry up, that would be great. All right, well done. Main menu replay. Yeah, this is the only stage in the game. So that is a couple of rudimentary GameMaker games, GameMaker projects on this computer. Again, I thought that did fairly well. It did start to choke a little bit when I bumped up the flower density on Wizarducks, but that's to be expected. So if I were to launch a finished GameMaker game, this is Exophobia. This is a 3D in GameMaker, like Metroidvania Doom-like, I guess I would describe it as. I don't know if, actually, you know what? Hang on. Let me open Steam settings and let me, yeah. I'm offline. Let me go into Steam settings and turn on the FPS overlay. Where can that be found? Is it in-game? In-game FPS counter on. I'm gonna turn that on, put that in the top left. And we can run Exophobia. And I'll keep an eye on the frame rate. I'm not gonna play too far into this. Again, I might skip through it until there's a little bit of a section in the game with a little more going on. Zarkatak, you didn't fix the 3D transparency layering issue. Oh no. Anyway, yeah, the shooting the gun doesn't really have a hit on performance because in the grand scheme of things, there's so few particles when you do this. And I honestly don't know, like, unless I were to get into, like, a boss fight, which I don't think I want to play that far into this game. Unless I were to get into, like, a boss fight, I doubt there's going to be enough on screen out at any given time to, oh, good, health pickups. I needed that because I'm bad at this. I doubt there's going to be enough going on at any given time to really make anything bad happen. Let's see. How much more of this do I want to play? So we can push buttons. I'm trying to keep an eye on the FPS meter in the corner of the screen. Hello. Goodbye. Very rude. Don't want to see you. Go away. Alrighty, I think that's enough of that. So, I know that I said earlier that I was going to run some synthetic benchmarks like 3D Mark Time Spy on this thing, but this video is already going on pretty long, so I think I'm actually going to save that for a separate video, just because I don't want this thing to end up being like an hour and a half. As we can see, this $255 computer is definitely adequate for basic and I would say even intermediate GameMaker use. At this current moment, I would consider Wizarducks and the Lost Hat to be an intermediate GameMaker project. It's about 80,000 lines of code and probably a few hundred sprite assets. Obviously, a much larger GameMaker project with hundreds of thousands of lines of code and thousands of sprite assets and thousands of audio assets would probably make this thing start to choke. But until you get to that point, if you just want to use GameMaker, you really don't need to overspend on a computer. So there is another part to this which I can't really address right now, which is laptops. There tends to be a lot more variability in the power levels of laptops. Like, for desktop computers, any desktop computer that's newer than like 7 years old should be able to handle GameMaker just fine. But when it comes to laptops, you also have to consider things such as heating, overheating, thermal management, and battery power, and things like that. And any laptop owner will know very well that it's not out of the question for those things to throttle down. If, for example, you start to heat up, because laptops generally don't have quite as good heat management as desktops, or if you're not plugged in, if you're running on battery power, laptops will often limit the amount of power that they will draw so that the battery lasts longer. And I can't really offer any guidance on that other than to like pay attention to factors like that. Windows does have a handful of power settings that it might be worth checking out if that is a concern to you. How many things do I have to click to get to the actual power settings? Anyway, So if you wanted to use this build as a starting point and consider starting with something like this and then upgrading it to your liking, probably not a terrible place to start with that would be to add a graphics card. And I know that I do have that 1650, which I've had lying around for a while. I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend this because for the amount of power you get out of it, for whatever reason, they haven't depreciated in price as much as I would really have expected them to. It probably would be more worth looking at something a little bit more like an AMD Radeon 6600, which is going to be a little bit more expensive than the 1650, but it will offer you a lot more computing power. If that's a little too much, there is the AMD 6500, and I feel like even these are not priced where I would expect to see them based on the amount of computing power they have on offer. But anyway, food for thought. There is, of course, the old favorite NVIDIA RTX 3060, which I believe is currently on top of the Steam hardware survey. There's the 3050, which is a little bit farther down there. Why are these, like, why am I seeing 3050s listed at the same price as 1650s? That's the world of graphics cards is weird. If you wanted to upgrade your CPU, which is probably not a terrible idea, you have a few choices should you want to stay on the AMD AM4 motherboard platform or not. If you're going for like saving money, that's probably not a terrible idea because the newer AM5 platform uses a newer generation of memory in particular, which tends to be a little more expensive. There is the 5600G, which is kind of the I don't know if I would call it the successor to the 3200G, but it is another one of AMD's APUs. A little bit more expensive, but this is a 6-core chip instead of a 4-core chip, and I think the 5600G also does support whatever AMD's equivalent of hyperthreading is, so it's 6 cores, 12 threads instead of 4 and 4. And I don't believe the integrated graphics Radeon Vega 7 or anything especially to write home about, but it is several years newer than the integrated graphics in the 3200G, so I would expect that at the very least it wouldn't be worse. Let's see. On the Intel side, if you were to let's cross out those two things, there's a couple of low-end choices. For example, Intel's 12100, the i3s, and as far as integrated graphics go, Intel kind of does the opposite of what AMD does, and if Intel sticks a letter F on the end of their CPU model name, that means it doesn't have an integrated graphics to go with it, and if it doesn't have an F, then that means it does. It's kind of confusing if you don't know what to look out for. There is the slightly newer 13100, which I believe is a very similar chip, and also the 14100, which also I believe is a very similar chip. But let's stick the 12100 in there. You will of course need a motherboard to go with it. Let's see. I would recommend not overspending on something like a motherboard if you're trying to optimize for cost, as long as it has like everything that you need.
Hey.
However, if you don't want to run into the same problem that I did with not having an Ethernet cable long enough, you might want to make sure that you're filtering for boards that have built-in Wi-Fi. Just some food for thought. That would apparently bring us up to 335. Like I said, there are some newer, as they're known, motherboard platforms from, for example, AMD and their AM5 platform. Intel's newest line of CPUs should be coming out in probably a couple of weeks, and they will have their own new platform. Let's see. If I started with a CPU, for example, I believe the 8500G is another APU that AMD makes, and we can stick that in there. This is definitely, I want to say the, where is it? The Radeon 740M integrated graphics that come with these newer ones are actually pretty good.
Hey.
Like, still probably not quite as good as having a dedicated graphics card, but much better than integrated graphics used to be. There is the matter of the motherboard, and I believe these actually aren't that much more expensive than the AM4 ones, which kind of surprised me. But yeah, let's select for having Wi-Fi included if we don't want to have the Ethernet problem. Some people make a big stink about how like you should be plugged in, wired for internet at all times for everything, but I don't think it's worth making a big deal about. Memory, DDR5 memory, which the AM5 platform uses, rather than the DDR4 that AM4 uses, is going to be a little bit more expensive. Can I find like 2x8 sticks like I had before? Yeah, even the cheapest DDR5 of the same capacity as what I had is going to be like twice as expensive. Anyway, cheapest AM5 setup that I could work out on this website comes out to $424. So that's just some food for thought. I will have this this part list linked in the video description should you want it. So one last thing of note before I end it off here. So if you are coming at this from the opposite end of the spectrum, by which I mean you have a more fancy computer and you want to know how your GameMaker game is going to run on something that's much lower powered, well, one, I would always say that it's not a terrible idea to like become that one person in your family who always ends up with everyone else's electronics when they replace them. Just so that you can have like an armada of testing devices. But if that doesn't happen to be an option for you, and if you would like to just send your game to me for testing on this thing, I do offer like GameMaker game benchmarking as one of the things on my Patreon, and I suppose that would be as good of a transition as any to ending it off. I know that I say at the end of every video that, like, you know, big ol' thanks to the Patreon people for contributing to what I do. But especially in videos in which I have to, like, buy materials for, like, that funding has to come from somewhere, and I'm definitely glad that I've got some people who are willing to come along for the ride and contribute in some way. If you would like to join the ranks of the Dragon Appreciators, I will have a link to the Patreon page down in the description of the video, as always. Until next time, my name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games. You should all go check out Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is one of the games I was testing earlier in the video. That is the game that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Link to that Steam page can be found down below as well. I like to post videos on the weird stuff you can do with GameMaker. Usually that involves more software than hardware, but I did enjoy making this video and I might do more hardware related things in the future. Who knows? I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, VitroV, Squarecrow, Spy Die Games, Manta Ray, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.